Thank you, Chairman Merman. Good afternoon to the Education Committee. I'm Senator Megan Hunt, MEGAN-HUNT, and I'm here to introduce LB487. I introduced this bill in response to recent and current efforts to chip away at public education by diverting funds away from them to support private institutions and their wealthy benefactors. We can all see that there's a concerted effort happening to attack our public education system from multiple angles with the goal of increasingly privatizing education in Nebraska. We hear words and phrases like choice and parents' rights and quality of education for all, and supporters of these bills say that they are motivated by helping underprivileged students and students with special needs. This is a lot of feel-good, do-good spin on what these proposals really do. LB487, this bill, is in response to a bill introduced by Senator Linehan that would give dollar-for-dollar tax credits to businesses or individuals that donate to scholarship-granting organizations that act as a middleman for distribution of donations to go toward tuition for private school students. This bill, LB753, has already been reported to general file by the committee, and it seems like a likely contender for a priority bill. With LB487, I wanted us to have a public hearing on an amendment that I will be introducing to LB53. No, I already did, an amendment that I have on LB753 to get public input on the record about what is at stake under the terms of LB753 as it stands right now. My bill, LB487, would prevent any school that receives public dollars from discriminating on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, ancestry, citizen status, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, or special education status. Since private schools are not subject to our statutes and regulations governing public schools, there's really no oversight other than from the respective church official or from that private school's management. I'm not here to say that children and families shouldn't be able to choose private schools. They can certainly do that regardless of whatever we pass in the legislature. And I'm also not saying that students don't have positive experiences at private schools. I'm saying that schools that receive public funds should not be able to discriminate, period. LB753, as introduced and amended by the committee, requires private schools to comply with the anti-discrimination provisions of 42 USC 1981. We've talked about this many years in the past. I'm familiar with this citation. It's an old federal law that prevents racial discrimination for the purpose of contracting. How it applies here is if a family wants to contract with a private school for the student's attendance, the school cannot refuse the student based on race. But it's a very loose and limited protection. And every year that Senator Linehan has introduced this bill, I and others have pointed that limitation out. And I've attempted an amendment with the content of LB487, this bill before you before. And despite extended debates, despite extended conversations, and having it been explained many times why this anti-discrimination provision is important, we have never been able to get it on the bill. When a public school student gets a scholarship to attend a private school, the rights they had in the public school system does not travel with them. The private school may expel them based on their identity, appearance, or beliefs without any repercussion, and there's limited recourse for the student and family if that happens. Religious schools can deny admission to students that come from a faith background that's different from the school's religious affiliation. If one of these schools does admit a student of a different faith, the student is required to adhere to the religious tenets followed by that school in some cases. In effect, this does eliminate choice for parents in places where the only private school available, if any, holds different faith traditions than their student. Our state constitution prohibits discrimination in public education. This protects all students who receive a public education in Nebraska. If an instance of discrimination happens in a public school, students and families and parents and staff of schools can trust and know that they have recourse, that there's accountability for that kind of treatment. If we're going to send public taxpayer dollars to private schools, we should remove the ability of those schools to legally refuse to serve certain students or to legally discriminate against any students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Hunt at this time? Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Thank you, Senator Hunt, for being here today. Could you explain to me your definition of public dollars?
To me, public dollars are taxpayer dollars. I don't know. I guess I'm not really prepared for that question, but
Well, it's kind
I
of
will
an
be for the
important
floor.
one. Yeah, because the public dollars, there's been several court
Well,
cases.
I know we disagree about if dollars that would be given to schools through your Opportunity Scholarship Act are public dollars or not. That's the debate that has been had year after year. I believe they're public dollars because they're taken away from the pool of tax money that would be given to public schools.
Do you realize there's several court cases, including Supreme Court case, that says that's not true?
We will debate that, when your bill comes to the floor. I
We have
disagree.
debated it, and I've said it many times.
Yes, we have debated it and we will continue to.
But the question is, are you aware there's several court cases that say that is not true?
Yes, I'm aware of the ones you're talking about. Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that public schools can refuse to accept students with disability in option funding? If I'm a parent and I want to go, I'm in Elkhorn, let's say I want to go to Millard, but my child has an IEP, then Millard can say they're full and they don't have to take the child.
Well, neither do private schools. And so that doesn't solve this problem. What would solve the problem is adequate funding for public schools.
So are you saying that any public school that refuses to take a child with an IEP should not get state funding?
I think that every public school should take children with IEP if that's the school that they're going to, yeah.
But that is not, you realize that's not what's going on now.
What this bill does is say that any school that gets public funding cannot discriminate. So then that would also apply to public schools.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Senator Wayne?
What happens if they do? What happens if they do discriminate?
Like what's the penalty?
Yes.
So I didn't prescribe the penalties for this bill because the intention is to hold a hearing to amend this on to Senator Linehan's bill. So if we look at the context of what this would look like amended onto her bill within the framework of that bill, in the committee's amended version of that bill, AM 338, section 4, subsection 2, page 4, line 27, provides that the private school certification as a qualified school for the scholarship program is subject to revocation by the Department of Revenue if they don't follow the requirements of the act. So I think that's a fair punishment. I think that's a fair penalty that's in Senator Linehan's bill now. It could also apply to those qualified schools that would be receiving public dollars if somebody is experiencing discrimination. If a school is discriminating, it could lose its qualification status and then no longer be eligible to receive public funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Senator Hunt? Senator Conrad?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator Hunt. Appreciate you bringing the measure forward and providing the committee with some context about your kind of thinking, your strategy related to the forthcoming policy debate. But really two things I was thinking about as I was rereading the bill in advance of the hearing was one, it's kind of fortuitous perhaps it's heard the same day as Senator McDonald's measure regarding the textbook loan program. And I'm wondering if, for example, that perhaps might be another utilization of public resources, which may broaden non-discrimination provisions in our law. I don't know. I'm just kind of brainstorming, thinking about that. But the other piece I just wanted to mention was, I think, I see parallels here with other policy discussions that the legislature's entertained in recent years. I think maybe it was Senator Vargas, or I don't remember who exactly brought it a couple of years ago, but they said hey, if you're going to get LB487 or tax incentive funds, you need to have a non-discrimination policy. If you're going to have public resources, you need to hit some minimum standards, kinds of things. So I'm guessing perhaps that was your impetus or unimpetus in bringing the legislation forward, or maybe not.
My whole deal in everything is that we cannot give public resources to any entity that is discriminating against anybody, because we all pay into these funds. We all give our money to these funds that are supposed to serve everybody, these services, these departments, these agencies, whatever. And, you know, we all use the roads, we all use this and that. We all benefit from public education, even if we ourselves don't send our children there. We all have a vested interest in the general public being educated, obviously. And so when we are using taxpayer resources and we've decided it's part of the social contract that we're all included in our culture and society, that we're going to fund these things, it should not go to an organization that can say, no gay teachers, no gay parents, no trans kids, because that's all of our tax dollars and they aren't serving all the people.
Any other questions for Senator Hunt? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. I don't really have a close prepared. I can respond to some conversations, some discussions that were had here that I take very seriously, which is that obviously, of course, public schools should not be discriminating either. Obviously, of course, we know that our public schools have a history of discrimination in our country and in our state. At the same time, I think that there is a difference between discrimination as a moral position, which is what a religious school would do under Senator Linehan's bill. They would say, we are taking these dollars, but we will not allow certain children or staff or parents potentially to be involved in the, taking the benefits of our school that they have paid into. There's a difference between saying, on a moral basis, we're going to cut out an entire class of people, and saying we don't have the resources or the capacity to provide a service that we need to provide. And this has been an issue taken up by legislature forever, by this committee forever, is how do we make sure that all the kids in our public schools receive the services that they're entitled to? And it's a lot harder to do that when we're cutting back the funding for these schools that are meant to serve every child. So please don't construe anything I'm doing as, I think this type of discrimination is okay and now you've got me and it's a gotcha thing of, oh, but actually they've got the disability, the kids with disabilities are getting discriminated against and you didn't say that. And it's like, obviously we're all against that, but there's a difference between a problem with capacity and hate in your heart that you're putting on these kids, which is what a lot of these schools are doing. I have to say, opposition like this, I hope that someday, history looks at the conversations that we've had around these issues in the past and they say, it's just one of those things that we know that we're on the right side of, and there just isn't the will to do anything about this in the legislature right now. As that one testifier harassed my staff member, Senator Merman, you were smiling at what he was saying. Like, it's just a gross experience in here with you guys, and I feel very disrespected by most of you. So with that, I'll close, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have to disagree with you. I wasn't smiling at what he was saying. I don't even know what he was saying, and I wasn't smiling.
Maybe you were
because he was doing
daydreaming
it
about
either.
something.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And sorry, I forgot to mention, we had, in letters, we had 25 proponents, 101 opponents, 0 neutral. Any questions for Senator Hunt?
I just
Senator Conrad.
Thanks, Chairman Merman. Thanks, Senator Hunt. And I know you've got to get back to committee as well, and we've got another measure before everybody maybe hopefully makes their Valentine's plans here today. But committee room has been especially chilly the last couple of days, I think, to prepare for a lot of people coming in. But you definitely brought some heat and some fire and some spice that I was not expecting when I looked at the agenda here today. So, I really was thinking about 2 tracks on this. I mean, these have been long-ranging discussions about tax credit bills or voucher bills, and I know Senator Linehan has been super passionate and super clear about her policy objectives in that regard. I know that the non-discrimination piece has always been a part of that debate throughout that I've watched in Nebraska and beyond. And I think you were clear about why you were bringing the bill, because procedurally it had been an issue when you'd attempted to raise it in the past, that it hadn't had a hearing. And so I thought, maybe it seems like we just got a little bit off track with the procedural piece there. The other thing that I was just thinking about that maybe is missing from the record is, this measure and any measure we bring, it's not brought in a vacuum, right? There's a very complex existing system regarding non-discrimination in public entities, whether it's schools or employment or what have you, that has a
Medicine,
whole
yeah.
host of remedies and a whole host of court cases after it and all of those kinds of things, right? So trying to figure out, how this piece kind of fits within that existing legal framework to advance what is exactly our shared goal, is non-discrimination, right? And just kind of figuring out the best way to do that for different entities, perhaps for different purposes. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure to maybe put a bow on it or connect the dots on some of that here today, because I think it perhaps got a little off track from maybe what I was anticipating, but maybe not. Maybe that's part of the process, and embrace the chaos.
I'll say it went about as I expected.
Okay, all right.
Any questions for Senator Hunt? Okay, that'll close the hearing on LB 487.